What if I told you that the biggest threat to your wealth isn't some huge market crash, but a series of costs so small you don't even notice them? 1,000 tiny cuts to your bottom line. Well, that was the critical finding of an audit done over 250 years ago by none other than Benjamin Franklin. And what you need to know is that these small leaks are more dangerous today than they have ever been. Welcome to MoniLytics, where we break down the research behind your money.
Let's start with a core idea from Franklin's 1758 Almanac. This quote, "It's not really about farmers and noblemen. It's a really powerful statement about being in control of your money." For Franklin, real status didn't come from your family name or inherited wealth. No, it came from the independence you earned through your own work and, just as importantly, smart financial management. A person who's financially independent stands tall. Someone who's in debt, well, no matter their title, they're on their knees. This idea is the bedrock of his entire financial philosophy.
All right, so in this explainer, here's the path we're going to take. First up, we'll dig into Franklin's core diagnosis of how wealth gets destroyed, what he called small leaks. Then we'll look at his incredibly systematic solution, the art of virtue. From there, we'll jump forward in time and see how 18th century luxuries became today's superfluities. We'll explore the psychology that makes them so tempting, and finally, we'll see how we can apply his old-school audit to our 21st century lives.
Okay, let's dive into our first section, Franklin's small leaks philosophy. The whole idea here is how those tiny, seemingly insignificant expenses are what can actually sink a great big ship.
Now, the term trifling expenses is really specific, and that's key. Franklin wasn't worried about you buying a house or a carriage. His genius was in spotting the real enemy, the tiny little costs that we just brush off as nothing. You know, the daily coffee, a small convenience fee, that little impulse buy at the checkout. He understood that these micro costs, when they add up over time, have a massive macro-level impact on your financial health. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts for your bank account. And Franklin lived this himself. There's a fantastic story he tells about how he used to eat his breakfast out of a simple pewter spoon in a cheap bowl. But one day, his wife, wanting them to look a little more respectable, went out and bought him a silver spoon and a china bowl. The cost was 23 shillings, which he called an enormous sum. Now, it wasn't because 23 shillings would bankrupt him. It's because he saw it for what it was, a change in principle. It was the first leak. That one little purchase was the gateway for more luxuries that would eventually cost him way, way more. So, faced with this slow creep of luxury, what did Franklin do? He didn't just make a New Year's resolution to be better. No, that wasn't his style. He engineered a system. This next section is all about his methodical approach, which was honestly less about being a good person and more about creating a behavioral control system for his life and his wallet.
At the core of his system were these 13 virtues. Now, while he thought they were all important for a good life, 2 of them were the absolute pillars of his financial system. The first is frugality, which he defined as waste nothing. Makes sense, but the second is just as important. Order, which meant let each part of your business have its time. Together, these 2 were a powerful defense. Frugality controlled what he spent his money on, while order controlled how he spent his time and attention, which kept him from making those impulsive mistakes in the first place.
So how did he actually track this stuff? He was an inventor, after all. He created what was basically an 18th century spreadsheet. He made a little grid, and every single day, if he committed a fault against one of the virtues, he'd put a little black dot in the box. He was literally treating self-improvement like an accounting problem. He was auditing his own behavior, collecting data to find the bugs in his personal operating system. This data-driven approach to his character was the exact same approach he took to building wealth.
Okay, so let's bring this into our world. How does this idea of trifling expenses look today? Well, they've evolved. They've mutated. Today, they're more abstract, way more automated, and you could argue a whole lot more dangerous. Franklin had this great warning that artificial wants will eventually crowd out your natural needs. The desire for fancy clothes and imported goods, he said, comes at the direct expense of fundamentals. His point was that trying to look rich can literally leave you without enough money to eat. It highlights a critical trade-off that's still true today. Every single dollar you spend on a want is a dollar that isn't available for a need or for an investment.
And let's just compare them side by side. The unnecessary luxuries, or superfluities of Franklin's time, were tangible things. China plates, silk scarves, silver spoons, you could hold them. But today's superfluities, they're often completely invisible and they're recurring. Think about it, streaming services, little in-app purchases, the insane convenience of one-click buying, and my personal favorite, subscription creep,
where all those little monthly charges just pile up without you even noticing. These are the new small leaks.
So this really brings us to the key question, doesn't it? How did we get from a simple silver spoon to a global multi-billion-dollar microtransaction industry? Well, the answer isn't really about technology, it's about something that hasn't changed at all: human psychology.
Which brings us right to our next section, the psychology of modern leaks. We're going to look at a couple of well-known behavioral biases that are expertly used to create and widen those small leaks in our finances today.
So, first up, we have something called the endowment effect. The idea is simple. As soon as we feel like we own something, we value it way more than we did before. Free-to-play video games are an absolute masterclass in using this against you. They let you play for free, invest your time, build up your character or your farm. They make you feel that sense of ownership. And once you're invested, spending just a few dollars to upgrade or protect something you already feel is yours seems totally reasonable.
The second big psychological trick is called ego depletion. Basically, research shows that your willpower, it's like a muscle. It gets tired. Every time you have to resist a temptation, you ignore a pop-up ad, you say no to an impulse buy, you skip that limited time offer, you use up a little bit of mental energy. So after a long day of being bombarded with these things, your willpower is just drained. Your ego is depleted. And that's when you're most vulnerable to giving into that one last trifling expense. You just don't have the fight left in you.
And if you want to see the financial scale of this, just look at this number. That is $2.4 million per day from a single company's free-to-play games. Now remember, this isn't revenue from selling a $60 game. This is the combined power of millions and millions of tiny little trifling expenses, all weaponized by a deep understanding of our own psychology.
So the big question is, how do we defend ourselves against all this? Well, for our final section, we're going to bring this all the way back to the beginning. It turns out we can apply Franklin's methodical, systematic approach as a direct countermeasure to all these modern challenges.
Look, the threats have changed. They've gone from physical China bowls to invisible subscription creep. But the fundamental defense, it hasn't changed at all. Franklin's system of a conscious, regular review is the perfect antidote. It forces us to take these invisible expenses and make them visible, to consciously evaluate the very things that modern systems are designed to hide from us.
And the parallels between his method and modern advice are just uncanny. Franklin's daily review of his virtues, that's just a monthly subscription audit. His manual paper ledger, that's our budgeting apps. His focus on frugality and order, today we call that intentional spending, consciously choosing where our money goes instead of just letting it happen. And his goal to cut out all unnecessary actions? What's a better modern equivalent than just going into your settings and turning off automatic renewals? The tools are new, but the discipline is absolutely identical.
And really, that's the final takeaway. The core principles of a 250-year-old audit are maybe more relevant today than they've ever been. The leaks might be digital now, but the discipline it takes to plug them is timeless. So the question is, what trifling expenses in your life are you going to take a closer look at? If you found this research valuable, please like this video, subscribe to MoniLytics, and check out the affiliate links in the description to support the channel. And stay tuned for our next deep dive, where we'll be shifting our focus to the 1739 Currency Act, creating value from thin air.